Foundation, hosting their second annual All Ages Fishing Derby on Saturday, October 18th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Veterans Memorial Plaza in Farmington's Berg Park. Prizes will be awarded for the largest fish in several age brackets, and the Animas River will be stocked. This is a free event, but a fishing license is required for all participants between 12 and 70 years old. The River Reach Foundation Fishing Derby on Saturday, October 18th.
11 minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, the 15th day of October, 2025. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Micklin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the airwaves here in San Juan County, New Mexico. In Durango, Colorado, we're broadcasting at 103.3 FM. And if you're listening to my voice anywhere else on the planet, you've gone to our website to do that, KSJE.com, or maybe you're listening through the new KSJE app. It's glad to have you with us this morning. Also, welcome to our viewers who are watching the program. The video is streaming out live to the KSJE Facebook page and also to our YouTube channel. So glad to have you with us this morning, everybody, because coming up are conversations about juvenile crime, a recent press conference with the Farmington Police Department and the San Juan County Sheriff's Office, kind of shed some light on the issue here in San Juan County and elsewhere across the state. Police Chief Steve Hebbe is my guest this morning. We'll be talking with him in the next few moments right here on KSJE today. Then reminder that coming up next hour, Roving with the Arts, our weekday classical music program with Mick Hess. That's coming up at 9:06. A 90-minute version of the program on Wednesdays, because that takes us to 10:30. And right on Four Corners, our local and regional author program. Delcherie Gladden is speaking with New Mexico author and illustrated Zara Marwan. She is her guest today at 10:30 on KSJE. Don't forget, you can also connect with us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and X, in addition to Facebook and YouTube. And if you're a podcast listener, you can subscribe for free to KSJE Podcasts. You'll find them where you're already listening to podcasts, I would surmise. So check it out and discover a new local program that you may have missed, or better yet, listen to podcasts through the new KSJE Radio app, available now at the App Store and Google Play. You can stay connected while you're on the go. Outside our studios here at San Juan College is a partly sunny Wednesday morning, 56 degrees at the moment. The forecast calls for a partly sunny day today with a high of 72, maybe still a scattered shower popping up. Overnight, partly cloudy, 45. Tomorrow, sunny but cooler, the high only 57 on Thursday and Friday. And overnight lows, as you can see, in the mid to upper 30s for the middle of October. Back with my guest, Farmington Police Chief Steve Hebbe, right after this on KSJE. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center. The most important ingredients to sustaining health and wellness are the resources and tools that help you live a vibrant and healthy life. At San Juan Regional Medical Center, the goal is to promote health by making sure those resources are available. Find the path to the best life at lifebetterhere.com. San Juan Regional Medical Center. Better is our mission, improving lives through personalized health and care.
KSJE is supported by Farmington Municipal Schools, providing educational opportunities in arts, dual language, and career and tech programs for students in the city of Farmington and beyond in the Farmington Municipal School District. Farmington Municipal Schools has a history of achievement, innovation, and community partnerships. Find out more at farmingtonschools.us.
Now back to Studio A and the award-winning Scott Micklin morning program on KSJE.
My guest this morning on the program, as I mentioned, Farmington Police Chief Steve Hebbe is here. Chief, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Scott. I feel like I'm in New York City, Studio A.
Right, exactly. Well,
Studio 52, wasn't that
something like that. 54 was the disco. You remember from those days of your youth.
Subtracted off to, but
well, that's all right. Yeah, well, who can remember those years ago? But it's good to have you here. You're here twice a month anyway in Studio A.
I am,
with the cop shop, so, we're just having you here in the morning, though.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm glad you came in because it's an important topic to talk about. That is juvenile crime. As I mentioned, you and the sheriff's office got together and had a press conference about it, and some of the issues. We've had some shootings and some killings, and so I think the public was concerned about that. And so I guess his first question is kind of give us an idea of what the situation is from maybe those cases, as much as you can say, and an overall picture of San Juan County, I guess, when it comes to that.
So the sheriff's office really took the lead on calling a press conference. We as a county had been pretty quiet on juvenile crime. We have our own crime challenges, but around the state, you were seeing Sam Bregman, and I was down with the sheriff a couple of times for press conferences with Sam, focused on the juvenile code and trying to get a rewrite because of all the crime that they faced. And I think his stat is half of the kids that are in the detention facility in Bernalillo are in there for homicide. So it is a big issue in other parts of the state. It really hadn't been as big an issue for us. We didn't have really kind of those high-profile cases that you saw in some other parts.
And he is pardon me for interrupting, but he's the DA in Bernalillo County, Albuquerque.
Yes.
That's who he is. He's also running for governor, by the way, right?
Yes, he is, as a Democrat. So we participated, and I'm aware of other jurisdictions and other chiefs that have struggled with this problem, but we hadn't seen it. And then really over the last month to 2 months, it kind of began hitting us. So we had a big shootout here in Farmington. 2 were killed, one of them a 15-year-old who pulled a gun out and initiated the shooting, shot 2 people. One of them died. So that was the first real uh-oh. And then we had another one recently, and it was again a shootout on Allen Street, and we had I think 2 more wounded in that case. So we've had 2 dead and 3 wounded over the last month and a half, all involving juveniles. And the sheriff's office has had a couple of high-profile ones. As we investigated the second one, we linked kind of a group of kids to several different crimes, some of them quite violent, kidnapping, a lot of guns involved. And so I think I supported the sheriff, and hey, we need to draw attention to this. We need to let the public know this is an issue here for us as well.
Gotcha. And that's what the press conference was kind of about when you were talking about, both of you, talking about these cases and some of the other incidents that you uncovered during the investigation. And so I should point out to the audience, we did invite Sheriff Ferrari to join us this morning. He is regrettably out of town, and I think he would have been here had he been available. So I appreciate the office of the sheriff and getting back to us. He did make a statement at that press conference, and I wanted to share that with our listeners and viewers this morning, just so that we get some of the perspective of the sheriff's office here on the conversation this morning as well.
Time and time again, the issues more important for New Mexicans fall on deaf ears. It's time for New Mexicans to stand up and demand from our legislation true change. And we need to address juvenile crime, we need to address recidivism, we need to address bail reform, and the issues that are plaguing the state of New Mexico. But why is it that in New Mexico, we're last in everything we should be first in, and first in everything we should be last? And I think as New Mexicans, we're tired of it, and we need our legislation to step up and do the right thing. Be aware of what's happening in New Mexico. Be confident that your law enforcement, the DA's office, is doing everything we can to make sure these individuals won't return to the streets. I do want to bring up that policing starts inside the home. As parents, you are responsible for your children. You need to know where your children are at. We will absolutely do everything we can using the tools we have to hold these people accountable, including parents.
That is San Juan County Sheriff Shane Ferrari speaking at a recent press conference. Also attending that press conference, by the way, was District Attorney Fortner, who was there as well. Police Chief Steve Hebbe is my guest this morning here in the studio. And so the sheriff talking a little bit about legislation and putting the legislators on notice, it seems to me, about more needs to be done when it comes to maybe the juvenile code in New Mexico, because with these incidents that you just mentioned earlier, Chief, the penalties that these kids and their kids face maybe not as severe as some would like, or the punishment doesn't fit the crime, I guess is what they're saying.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something we've talked about a lot on our Cop Shop radio show, so Scott's had a chance to listen to my perspective quite a bit. The truth is, where we are on the juvenile code is it's just flipped. So we do not hold kids accountable until they do something like shoot and kill somebody. And then, of course, their life's over, as well as their victim's life is over. And so when you've got half of the kids in the Bernalillo detention facility that are there for homicide charges, right? Okay, now we're locking them up. First of all, the horse is already gone, so now we're closing the barn door. And second of all, any chances that we had along the way to teach kids that there are consequences for your actions are just gone. We do not hold them accountable for any of their first offenses, for any of their smaller offenses. And by the time they get to this, well, now there's nothing else to do with them except lock them up. So I don't really understand the philosophy on it, but it's something that District Attorney Bregman has been railing about, really. The Chiefs Association supported him. The sheriff clearly supports him. But we have not had success in getting the legislature to take it serious.
Interesting. And so in most of these cases, then, when a teen is charged with homicide or murder, they've had prior run-ins with the law, and that's the issue, I guess. These are the repeat offenders, so to say?
That is. That's actually the issue on both ends of it, right? Adult and juvenile and we see a lot of repeat offenders involved in crime, and I think you've even seen some of that nationwide, where I think we just had a crime where somebody had 45 prior arrests and then commits a spectacular homicide. So that is definitely a challenge for us here in New Mexico, is the recidivism that the sheriff was talking about, and not doing enough with juveniles to have some meaningful consequences. Now, to me, it's not a lockup festival. It has to be, and I would like to see the governor's office call for some sort of a broad-based, because certainly the legislature is not doing it, call for some broad-based study that involves law enforcement, CYFD, because a lot of these kids are treated poorly in their home environment. So just releasing them, which is a little bit what we're doing, we're releasing them back to their home. Well, their home was a mess in the first place. That is not where they're going to be helped. So they've got drug and alcohol and mental health problems, and really as a state we just are not addressing any of that. So some sort, starting with what D.A. Bregman said, starting with some sort of a rewrite of the Children's Code, which I don't think has had any meaningful rewrite since 1993. So 32 years ago, we actually did something on it. But that's the first step.
Got it. And with that, when you talk to your colleagues around the state, other police chiefs, and maybe this issue hasn't gotten to their communities yet, like in Farmington, we hadn't seen too much juvenile crime until just very recently, at least the spate of it, this so close together. What are you hearing from your fellow chiefs of police?
It kind of depends where you are. If you're in the Albuquerque Bowl area, they've seen it.
Yeah.
Same with Santa Fe. Las Cruces had, a fairly spectacular shootout a year ago, which was right at the end, if you remember, it was right at the tail end of the legislative session. So they're actually still in session, and there's just no reaction from it. The Courts, Corrections, and Justice Committee, that subcommittee, that is kind of going around the state right now from the legislature. It's a combination of senators and representatives. They were down in Las Cruces a couple of months ago, and Las Cruces PD played a compilation of videos that they've got from TikTok and YouTube, and then as a result of their criminal investigations. And it was just the Wild West. Kids in broad daylight stepping out and just cranking away with an automatic weapon while their friends are filming them. It is a problem, and I'm pessimistic that the legislature understands how serious a problem it is.
And as the sheriff was mentioning too, he talked about parents, and so they have a role to play too in some of this. Now they are sometimes held accountable for the actions of their juvenile child in their household, but even those laws, do they need a refresh as well?
I think they do if that's really the direction we want to go. Some of that, I think, is why I'm saying I'd like to see more of a panel, because I don't know that I know the solution on dealing with the parents, because like I said, a fair amount of these kids are coming from just terrible homes in the first place, right? That's how they got here. Mm-hmm. So by the time we're down to holding the parents accountable for the actions of the kid, we probably missed the boat about 5 years before that. What were the parents doing with those kids, and what were we doing putting those kids back into that environment where they were destined to fail? And I know that CYFD has definitely had their struggles, and just went through yet another change in the top in leadership. I would like to sit down collaboratively with CYFD and law enforcement and see how our number one goal should not be reunification, which has been a lot of CYFD's mantra. It should be keeping the kids safe. And sometimes that's back with their parents, but sometimes not until the parents get their act together. And there's where we could hold parents accountable before the kids get into trouble, is making sure if you're going to have your kids, you are off the drugs, you are off the alcohol, you are off the crime that we're seeing in some of these families.
Sure, and there's been calls for reform at CYFD for a long time, and that I don't think has been happening. And so a lot of folks are frustrated, I think, at that point as well. And so you've done a lot of traveling, I think, around the state too, to testify in front of some of these committees that you mentioned, to give this type of perspective to these legislators. What's the feedback you get when you're sitting across the table from them?
I wish I could tell you it was good, but it really isn't. I think there's pockets that are starting to be a little more aware of, and the video from Las Cruces PD seemed to be sobering to some of the representatives down there, but they kind of readily got into making excuses and the abhorrence to putting any kid in jail, even though oftentimes sending them back to their home is worse than jail. So I'm not sure that they're even really seriously looking at what different things they could do. It'll be interesting to see what DA Bregman continues to do. He's been a little quieter here the last couple of months, but this is a 30-day session that's coming up, so unless the governor calls for something on the juvenile code, which in her defense, she did last year. So they had a special session. Juvenile code issues were definitely one of the things on her agenda, and the legislature just adjourned without addressing it at all. And then we did almost nothing in the 60-day this spring.
Right. And the other recent special session here earlier this month, I don't think had anything about it either. So there was that.
So that's a little bit why you heard in that clip Sheriff Ferrari kind of calling out the legislature, that we need to do something. And I'm not pretending, and I don't think the sheriff is, that we've got all the answers. But I know this, right now there's no consequences for kids. They know there's no consequences for them. And now we're seeing, the ripple effect of that. Actually, more and more violent, more and more gunplay, and that is concerning.
And as you said earlier, too, when these kids are doing these other things, maybe it's a theft or burglary or something like that, not a lot of consequences for those crimes in the juvenile code, and then it kind of blows up into some type of a shooting or injury or murder or what have you, and now we throw the book at them in some respects, and now their life is changed for the next 20, 30 years.
Yes, and that's, to me, honestly, I was saying kind of the same thing about homelessness around the state. And it really, in the country, we'd gotten to a spot where homeless people are camping on sidewalks and camping under bridges, and somehow we're viewing that as more humane than actually pulling them off the street, putting them in a facility until they can get their medication straightened out, until we can help them with the mental and drug problems that were afflicting that community. And instead, we treated it like it was a camping trip. Well, the problem was, though, within the homeless community, there were many of them being victimized by other people. So we're letting them go out, we're not dealing with the issue, and then they're being victimized more. That's some of the same stuff you're seeing with the kids. We're not dealing with the stuff on the front end, and then later on, there's other victims, and then the kid's life is over.
And again, I guess going back to the problem in our state, since it's only seems to be a few metro areas that are seeing some of this, and legislators come from all over the state, is that maybe, well, it's not in my backyard, I don't need to worry about it, kind of an attitude that you get from some of the lawmakers?
More it's Because Albuquerque Bowl controls so much of the legislature.
Sure. Big population center.
Yes, and so yes, it's happening in some other areas. Even some rural areas are experiencing some of it. Portales, I know that Chief and I have had conversations. But I really think in the Albuquerque area, there's just a failure on the part of the legislature to recognize what a significant problem it is. And I'm not sure why that is, because you've got the district attorney that's down there that's dealing with the cases. But so far, we have not pierced into that void to convince them that there's a real problem.
And this is something the state needs to take the lead on. You can't do much, or the counties can't do much at that level. It really has to come from the state level.
No, that's an excellent point. It really has to come from the legislature and the governor.
Right. Interesting. My guest this morning, Police Chief Steve Hebbe, is here. We are talking about the issue of juvenile crime. We've seen a little bit of an uptick here in San Juan County. The department, I think, keeps track of the crime stats and things like that. And so a lot of folks look at the crime and see it either going up, going down, staying the same, what have you. I would assume until this last couple of months or so, things were looking pretty stable in Farmington and San Juan County, but I haven't seen the stats. So is that a correct statement, or have you not seen them either?
I think that's a fair statement. I think it isn't that we've seen really an uptick in juvenile crime, but we certainly have seen an uptick in the violence of the juvenile crime.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the introduction of more guns, actual shootouts, not something that we were seeing as much before. So we've always had a level of juvenile crime, but not this violent.
Got it. And again, going back to the parent angle on this too, we have some laws on the books about alcohol serving for kids in people's homes, and parents can be held responsible for some of those incidents. Is that maybe a good start? And are you looking at something maybe more for gun use and things like that? If a gun's not secured, I mean, there should be some laws on the books about that too, isn't there?
I think, I think it's a combination. So the marijuana as well, it's illegal to provide that to young kids. So yes, those are some things that the police can do something about sometimes. Making that case is a little harder than saying it, but yes, we do look at where the kids got the guns, and when we're able to figure that out, if it was provided by the parents or if there's just recklessness on the part of the parent in leaving the gun around. And we've seen some shootings where the kids get into a gun and then shoot their sibling or shoot themselves, and those are tragedies. So this is an issue for the families. It is an issue for parents.
Right. But as you said, again, the kind of horse is out of the barn a little bit too. If you've got a kid going out causing gun crimes, being behind gun crimes, and someone's lost their life, now it's too late to maybe roll the clock back.
Yes, and those are frustrating.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, usually you can see the train coming on those. There's been a history of arrests, and there's just been no effective path to get them off of that. And then we're standing there with a victim, another family that's in the middle of a tragedy, and we're taking a kid to jail, which honestly is not my dream. That isn't all that complex usually to put somebody in jail. What's complex is to try and figure out how to prevent it from happening in the first place. So I'm disappointed that we aren't more aggressive in looking at that.
And with other groups in the state, whether it's the State Association of District Attorneys or the State Police Chiefs Association, are those groups doing things en masse to kind of get their voices united to talk to the legislature, or at least provide some feedback or some suggestions as to what type of legislation you would like to see being debated in Santa Fe?
Yes, and that's a good point. It isn't just the Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association, which is kind of in flux right now, but they've been a bigger player in the past. The District Attorney's Office, even Attorney General Torres has spoke up about trying to change not just juvenile court, trying to change some of the state laws to better reflect what you see at the federal level, which is one reason when the federal government arrives with either the FBI or in this case, the National Guard, when you start making federal charges on some of these cases, there's significantly more teeth, and the process of getting there is significantly easier for prosecutors. The state has a lot of protections, which is good in many ways, but I would tell you that those, and I think you'd have to hear it from the DAs, those protections, like Attorney General Torres says, go way too far and make it very difficult for justice to be delivered to victims.
And tell me more about that a little bit. Is the bars higher, I guess, to make the case against some of these juveniles in these cases at the state level than it would be at the federal level?
Yes, and that's some of what Attorney General Torres was talking about last year. The process of discovery, the process of going through the different hearings, even just the 409 hearings, because there isn't pretrial release in the federal system. There isn't here in New Mexico. And in order for prosecutors to keep somebody in jail, they have to have what's called a 409 hearing. That's a hearing on dangerousness, and they've got 3 days to do it. So they need to produce all the evidence, including all the body cams, all the reports, have all the witnesses available to go through this 409 hearing within 72 hours of it. And that doesn't exist in the federal system. And the result of it, oftentimes, is people are being released because that 409 hearing is such an obstacle to get everything done within that 72 hours that they're not holding them.
Got it. That sounds to me like the catch and release arguments that we hear around the state for not just juvenile but adult criminals too, I guess, right? Is that the issue? And that came from a constitutional amendment, if I remember correctly.
It did, a constitutional amendment followed by a Supreme Court decision interpreting that constitutional amendment.
Got it.
It did away with bail, but 409 hearings are supposed to be the vehicle by which judges can still hold people.
Gotcha. And that's been, I think, come up a lot, and so you would think that maybe the legislature's looking at maybe trying to rein that in a little bit or tweak it a little bit so it's not quite so misused. They're not.
They are not. When you go down there, the attitude of the legislators, and I have talked to several on this topic, and I'm not alone on talking about it. It is a hot topic. Is just, look, this is the courts. The judges aren't doing their job. The DAs aren't doing their job. The police aren't doing their job, which is just painful to listen to from people.
I was going to say, how do you keep your composure when you hear that, Chief?
I come back and I watch football with Scott.
I see. Okay. Well, there's that too. But yeah, but there's work to be done. Is what it sounds like to me.
And I don't think anybody who's seriously looking at the crime stats across New Mexico, in a recent poll out of the Albuquerque area, as they get ready for a mayoral race, identified with voters, crime is their number one concern, top the list. So I'm not sure. We seem to live in two different worlds between the average New Mexican that appears to really be concerned about the crime in their communities, and the legislators that really are not working very hard to stop it.
Interesting. Well, I think we'll be watching to see what happens with the regular session coming up, the 30-day session in 2026, and some of the other things. But I guess the word would be, if folks are concerned about this, they can certainly reach out to their local legislators, who I'm sure get an earful, and they can take that message to Santa Fe. Before we run out of time, Chief, I did want to ask you about the type of these criminal elements and these types of crimes. They seem to be not necessarily random crimes, but they seem to be targeted against specific victims and things like that, for the general public to understand it's not this rogue group of people that are going around committing crimes against random citizens. Is that the feeling that you get too, or is there still concern for folks to be aware of their surroundings?
Well, I mean, there's concern, and so I'm certainly not going to minimize it. There's concern when people are engaged in shootouts and you just happen to be in the area. But yes, you're right. In both of the major cases that I'm describing, and then some of the other ones that we're investigating, all the players knew each other in one form or another, and there was scores to settle, or there was business transactions that hadn't gone the way they wanted them to, and so it is not random. The players know each other, but that certainly hasn't lessened the violence.
Sure. Right, and still people should be aware.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, but it's still a safe place for the most part.
No, Farmington is still a safe place. This is, and I support the sheriff in it. He wanted to draw attention to it early on. We're starting to see this for the first time, while others have seen them before, and he wants to draw attention to it. He wants the community to start being more aware of what's going on. So.
Very good. Chief, I appreciate you coming in this morning. It's a busy week for you, but I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. That's Farmington Police Chief Steve Hebbe, my guest this morning here on KSJE.
The federal government has ended some broadband subsidies for schools and libraries.